Mini episode 1748 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to FDH Lounge mini episode 1748. This is FDH managing partner Rick Morris coming at you with one of our favorite FDH Lounge dignitaries, an original dignitary, my old pal Chris Galloway. And it's that time of year again. For mini episode 1748, we are kicking off our run through the NFL division by division. We are starting here today with the AFC East, and as is generally the custom, what we're going to do with the AFC East, before we get to that, since it's our first division to talk about, we're going to talk about a couple of macro-level notes for the season. We don't have many this year, as we just discussed off-air. Seems like there's fewer of them than usual, so we'll get to the goodness with the AFC East uno momento. But before we do that, let me reach over and make the hot tag to my great buddy, fellow Ohio Bobcat, Chris Galloway. Chris, great to have you in for this, as always, my man.
Rick, thrilling to be here. Wonderful to learn that I'm a favorite. That makes me feel great. We're all warm and fuzzy inside.
Well, I will say something of an inside joke that I'm ruining right now. I use that term a lot with folks here, but but you're one of them. You're one of them, Chris. Yeah, yes, you are. Yes, you are. And as far as if we were to look at our favorite off-season moves in the NFL this past year, that would be a very short list for either one of us, I'm afraid, from what we were going through. If you compare and contrast this to our last mini episode, actually 1746, doing our college football preview for the year, myself and Fran Stuckberry from our Sports Central. Of course, with the mega conferences this year, with the big expansion of the playoffs, the NCAA, a big difference last year to this year. You're looking at, again, the weekend one, the Brazil Peacock game, the Christmas Netflix doubleheader, but essentially, it just as an extension of Roger Goodell's crony capitalism greed run amok. This is continuity, actually. I mean, selling off everything that's not nailed down, I would regard as continuity, even if it shows up in new forms. Two of the defining names of 21st century NFL football, of course, and this is off, the field. So this kind of sums up kind of where we're at. Brady and Belichick, neither of whom is actively involved in the NFL anymore. Brady giving the old hip check to Greg Olson to become the number one analyst on Fox Sports games this fall. Bill Belichick leaving the New England Patriots, something that you forecast on this show before anybody, Chris. I said it years ago. This is a clip and save. You predicted the downfall of Bill Belichick. And I understand that right now, I think what he's doing is doing a football podcast, I understand, with Charo and the runner-up of Season 13 of Survivor. So I hope Bill Belichick has a lot of success with that. And Aaron Donald.
Well, he's doing that, and apparently a 24-year-old former cheerleader. So he's living the dreams.
The latter accomplishment, of course, is far more impressive and far more enviable from our point of view. And Aaron Donald, arguably the greatest defensive football player of the 21st century. If it's not him, he's on a very short list. He retires, but it's been a couple of years since he was in the Super Bowl. Arguably, that was his window to get out. He kind of seemed like he was going to retire right after the game there. Chance to leave on top the way that Elway did, but kept going a little longer. Aaron Donald leaves. But, again, defensive players, unless you're Lawrence Taylor or a handful of others, you don't get the ink of offensive players. So it's not like there's a whole host of people that are saying right now, hey, Aaron Donald won't be back this year. We're saying that because we're the show that gives you that kind of nuance. But, if these are the biggest developments that we're talking about in the offseason, then it has been a quiet offseason, Chris Galloway.
Rick, it really has been. We were talking off air, and you had mentioned to me that you didn't have a lot to talk about because there wasn't anything going on. And I said to you, thank God you said that, because I came to the same conclusion. It was a very quiet off season. A couple of moves, a couple of trades that might equate from, at least if you look at it from a Vegas standpoint, that might equate to half a win for a team, maybe. There's no earth-shattering quarterback move. There's other than maybe the Harbaugh hire with the Chargers, there's no great, coaching move. There's really not much to speak about. It's a lot of status quo. And my feeling, and folks here as we move into this, is that I think you have a lot of teams that are going to sort of be standing still or drifting backwards a little bit as the league moves a little bit more towards that sort of 9-8, 8-9, parity dreamland that Roger Goodell loves.
Yes, and really going all the way back to the days of Pete Rozelle on that one. And I find myself a lot of years making predictions for a lot of teams to be huddled around 8-8, and a lot of years I'm proven wrong. Interestingly, I don't know that this year I've picked more teams than usual to do that, but I think you're right that could very well happen. And as we get to the AFC East, there are a couple of squads in particular that may be candidates for that. The way we're going to do the format of these here, we settled on this a couple of years ago, and it has worked, I think, the most efficiently for us. If you go to Fantasy Football Draftology, available, this is the 2024 edition, available on the main page at fantasydrafthelp.com. Pages 17 and 18, the AFC and the NFC, one run-on sentence for each team. So we're going to do this division by division. So I have my run-on sentences, and then we will respond to that and kind of pick apart in terms of our specific thoughts on that. And for every division, these are the teams that I have picked in the order that I think they're going to finish. So with the AFC East, we start, somewhat surprisingly to me, I wouldn't have thought this at the end of last season, but as much as I'm a Miami Dolphins honk, regrettably in my estimation, we start with Buffalo. And my notes on them go as follows. It looked like the team was going to have to take a knee for at least a season to retool on the fly when they came up short again last season. Then they had to make several difficult cap decisions, albeit the team had a good draft and benefited from Miami failing to take a step up in the offseason. Albeit the Bills are still a bit thin in the back seven and may need some time to settle in at wide receiver. Miami. They are the former future 2024 AFC East champions, losing Christian Wilkins and coming out of the offseason with a number of holes on both sides of the ball, squarely fumbling the chance to surpass the Bills in the division and putting Mike McDaniel behind the eight ball in his third season. New York Jets. If Aaron Rodgers is both healthy and not washed, and the chances of being 2 for 2 on that front may not be great, then this roster is definitely playoff worthy even in a tough division. New England. The depleted roster that Bill Belichick left behind has less holes than most pundits perceive right now, but there are quite a number of spots where the starters are competent but not much better, leaving too few positions filled by impact players. So, in looking at this, Chris, outside of maybe some of my notes about Buffalo and Miami, I don't know that there's too much that the conventional wisdom would probably quibble with in terms of my notes.
No, I think those are fair notes. I do disagree with the order of finish. I do think the Dolphins will win the division.
Woohoo!
Last year I did pick the Bills to win the division. I'm and the Dolphins to finish second. I'm flipping that.
Okay.
So I think the Dolphins will win the division with a record of 10 or from 11, probably 11 wins, 12 wins at best, probably 11. I'm a little suspect on their end on the defense, but I think from an offensive side, they're gonna move the ball and score points. I think the Bills are gonna take a step back. I don't think you can just keep losing talent and expect your quarterback just to always pick up all the slack. I feel like the Bills are staring at about a 10-7 season a relatively moderately difficult schedule. And then the Jets, I'm with you. I think Aaron Rodgers is not only a kook at this point. His ending in Green Bay wasn't the greatest. He missed a whole year. He's been weird with this team in the offseason. And I think a couple missteps by the Jets and that locker room will tear itself apart. So I have the Jets kind of, bottoming out like with about 7 or 8 wins. I don't see them going far. And I agree with you on the Patriots. There is some competent talent there. There is some ability, but they're not a good football team. So look for them to finish with about 5 or 6 wins.
That's about where I've got them for. And again, from your lips to God's ears on the Dolphins here, I have them coming up short and actually, believe it or not making the playoffs. Here's the thing with Buffalo. So I actually, even though I'm picking them to win the division, this is one of these super nuanced points, I agree with you far more than I disagree. So the conventional wisdom amongst the critics out there is that Buffalo, that essentially last year in particular, again, come on, you had Kansas City right there in your barn, you still couldn't get it done. That was their last look. That's one more look, quite frankly, than I thought they were going to get based on what their progression had gone. So, I mean, they're not a legit Super Bowl contender anymore. My nuanced point is you can win a division that's good, but maybe not as good as everybody thinks it is, and still not be a legitimate Super Bowl contender. They're going to win the division, in my estimation. Again, hope I'm wrong, hope the Dolphins can do it, but I think they get in, and then they're just cannon fodder for whoever they play from there. So this is not me saying, oh no, Buffalo's window is still open. It's not. But they might be able to slide through this division is the way I see it, Chris.
I think Buffalo gets in as a wild card. I don't think they win the division. I don't think either the Dolphins or the Bills are built to go to the Super Bowl and win it. So to your point, I agree on the Bills' window is shut for now. They're sliding backwards. I think the Dolphins are poised to be good enough in the regular season, and then the typical soft postseason performance will show up and they'll get, bounced in round one or whatnot. I don't believe in any team in this division. The Patriots have too many problems, a rookie quarterback or Jacoby Brissett or whatever they're going to do. The Jets are an injury and a fist fight in the locker room away from just completely imploding. The Bills, I don't believe in them. I think that they're asking too much of their quarterback, and I think the Dolphins have enough talent. The Dolphins scream to me as one of those teams that's like, they're going to look so good at points during the regular season, but they're not built to win in the postseason. That's what they look like to me, and I just think that's how it's going to play out. They're going to win 12 games, and everyone's going to go ooh and ah, and they're going to get bounced in the first round.
Well, and as somebody that was watching them very, very intently last year on Red Zone, it was one of those things. I mean, I was able to watch them enough to really get a feel for things here. All I can say is, you should be able to empathize with me as a longtime Cowboys honk. I mean, that late season game, Miami and Dallas, that's like the meme of Spider-Man pointing at himself. Like, you talk about two teams that have some high-level skill player talent at various points along the way, but also a number of holes on the roster, and most importantly, can't get the job done against good teams. Dallas last year, even more than usual, struggled to beat good teams, and Miami struggled all year long to beat good teams. I mean, that's the whole thing here, too. I was watching this crestfallen as a Dolphins fan, like, oh my God, we're Dallas East. That's not what you want to be.
Yeah, the Miami Cowboys and the Dallas Dolphins are two teams that are definitely going to have some issues this year.
Yeah. Separated at birth, sadly enough, and I don't see that changing from the Dolphins' end. But in this division, this is where I suppose I do go against the conventional wisdom. I've got Buffalo as the only team making the playoffs. I have Miami missing the playoffs on a tiebreaker. Also, the New York Jets. So, although again, like you said, depending on what happens with Aaron Rodgers, there is the potential for them to really go south as well. We shall see. And Jared Mayo in New England, it's the whole thing of you don't want to be the guy who follows the guy. You want to be the guy who follows the guy who follows the guy.
Yeah, it's a tough spot for Jared Mayo, right? Because it's almost like he can't win. He could do a pretty decent job when people be like, well, he's not Belichick. Well, is Belichick, quote-unquote Belichick, without Tom Brady? You've heard me rail about that for years.
Yes.
It was an interesting hire. I mean, it was sort of a bold stroke. Surprised a lot of people. Surprised a lot of people that he had gotten that written into his contract secretly, that when Belichick was done, he was going to be the man. That was a power play that nobody really saw coming. So, I don't know. I mean, my guess is that is a locker room that's going to feel fresh. They're going to feel like, the witch is dead. They're going to feel pretty good, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of a honeymoon this year, but I don't think they have enough to turn it into wins and losses. I think those players are going to end up playing really hard for him, and to your point, there are some good players on that team, but just no way near enough to be competitive over the course of the season, and you're not winning a lot of games with Jacoby Brissett or a rookie quarterback. You're just not. Not with the talent that's on that roster.
Right. And my last point for the division is that, again, you, as we have established over a period of time, not quite the same believer that I am in the horse racing theory of bloodlines as far as, heredity with coaching and everything like that, and front office work. So I know you take a far dimmer view than I do of Ron Wolf's baby boy, Elliott Wolf, being the new GM of the Patriots.
I take a dim view of Elliott Wolf from when he was in Cleveland, and I listened to several interviews with him talking about football operations, the draft, etc., and came away very unimpressed. And so I'm not buying into, unless there's been some tremendous growth since he left Cleveland and he went to Seattle, I think it was. Mm-hmm. I'm not a believer.
Okay. All right, well, we'll have to see how that plays out, and in all likelihood, it's going to take a couple of years until the Patriots could be at least borderline good anyway, so we shall see how that goes. But in the meantime, they will be playing out the 2024 AFC East campaign, and we have, I think, summarized it going into the season, I think rather admirably, if I do say so myself. So thanks to you, Chris Galloway, and thank you to everybody for checking out this mini episode of the FDH Lounge.